Hello students, we were doing metals and non-metals and this is the third video under the series. Today we will study how metals they react with salt solutions of other metals. So we are going to study how metals react with salt solutions of other metals. So we will take two metals. Suppose we took copper and iron. Both these are metals and we took the solution of copper as copper sulfate and iron as iron sulfate. We take these two solutions and we take these two metals. So copper sulfate is blue in color and iron sulfate is light green in color. We will do an experiment. We take two beakers or test tube, put this copper wire in one and iron nail in the other. This is iron nail and this is copper wire. And fill these test tubes with salt solution. In iron, we take the solution as copper sulfate here, and here the solution will be of iron sulfate, which is green in color. So we take two test tubes and the experiment is set up like this. After 20-30 minutes, we can see some chemical reaction in these two test tubes. We want to know whether this chemical reaction has taken place in both of them or only in one of them. And how will we distinguish whether chemical reaction has taken place or not? All of us know, for chemical reaction, to observe a chemical reaction, we have 2, 3, 4 criteria. First, there can be a change in color. There can be some precipitate can be formed. Some gas can be evolved. Some temperature can be changed. If one or two changes are there, we can say that there is a chemical reaction has taken place. What we see in these two test tubes, that after 20 or 30 minutes, what we see that this test tube, no chemical reaction has taken place in this test tube, and here the chemical reaction has taken place, and what we see that the copper sulfate solution, the color fades. Otherwise it is blue color. After half an hour, the color, this blue color fades to light blue. And one more change, we notice that this iron nail, now it is covered by a brown material. Red brown color, brown material, brown substance is on this iron nail. And what is this substance? It is the deposition of copper metal on iron nail. So we see that in this test tube reaction has taken place, and in this test tube no reaction has taken place. So we want to know what is the reason that this copper is not reacting with iron sulfate and why this iron it is reacting with copper sulfate. In the previous video also we have studied the resistivity series, the reactivity, not resistivity, the reactivity series of metals. And we have devised a formula also how to remember this. I am writing that series again. So this is the series: potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminium, zinc, iron, lead and hydrogen. All of you know hydrogen is also included in the metal reactivity series, though it is a non-metal. And after hydrogen we have copper, mercury, we have copper, and I will write it here. After hydrogen we have copper, mercury, silver, gold and platinum. And we know that this is the reactivity series in decreasing order of their reactivity of metals. What does it mean? It means these, the metal on the top, potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, they are most reactive, and these one, silver, gold, platinum, these are least reactive, and these are in the middle order. They are mildly reactive. So this is the reactivity series of metal. By this series we can see which metal can displace which metal. This is a displacement reaction. I can write the equation here. Here iron, this is the iron nail. So iron plus CuSO4, what will be formed? FeSO4 plus FeSO4 plus copper. That is, this is a displacement reaction. This iron displaces copper from copper sulfate solution. Copper is displaced and iron forms its salt, iron sulfate. If we see the other reaction where there is copper is taken, copper plus iron sulfate, so simply it may be copper sulfate plus iron. But we see that in this test tube no reaction has taken place. So this reaction is not possible. It cannot, this cannot react with this and cannot displace iron from copper sulfate. Why this is so? We can see in this series that iron is above copper. It means iron is more reactive than the copper, and it is the rule of this reactivity series, that is the metals which are present above the lower metals, they can displace the metals below them and cannot displace the metals above them. I am repeating, that is the metals of the reactivity series can displace metals below them from their salt solution and not the metals above them from their salt solution. So this iron is above this copper, so copper cannot displace iron from its salt solution, while this copper is below iron, so iron can displace copper from its salt solution. So here iron is displacing copper from copper sulfate. It is saying I am more stronger, I am stronger than you, so you go away from your solution and I will take your place. This iron pushes this copper away from its solution and takes its place, as it is more reactive. It is stronger than copper. So this is how metals react with salt solutions of other metals. In the reactivity series, if they are above the metal, they will replace that metal from its solution, and if it is below the metal, it cannot replace. If you want to take, we can take some other example. Take the example of magnesium and zinc. Suppose we have magnesium and zinc, two metals, and we have solution of zinc sulfate here, and I took solution of magnesium sulfate here. Can you tell me in which reaction the reaction will take place? Whether magnesium can displace zinc? Yes, magnesium can displace zinc because magnesium is stronger than zinc. It is more reactive than zinc. It is on a higher position than zinc. So magnesium can displace zinc and magnesium sulfate will be formed and zinc will be displaced. Zinc will be displaced from the solution. But can this reaction is possible? Can zinc displace magnesium from magnesium sulfate? No. This reaction is not possible because zinc is at a lower position than magnesium. It is weaker than magnesium in reactivity, so it cannot displace magnesium from its solution. So by knowing this reactivity series, we can know which metal can displace which metal. So this is how we know metals can react with other salt solution, and these are displacement reaction. Displacement means one metal displacing the other from its solution. So this is how we know the reaction of metals with salt solution. Now next topic is we will know how metals and non-metals they react with each other. How metals and non-metals they react with each other. How the compounds are formed, what are the properties of those compounds, react with, how metals react with non-metals. So first I am taking one metal. Suppose I am taking sodium. All of you know sodium is a metal, and I am taking one non-metal, chlorine. Chlorine is a non-metal. First of all, we will see the electronic configuration of sodium. 11, the number is 11. So 281 is the EC and KLM. These are the shells where these electrons are moving. Chlorine, the number is 17, 287 KLM. In the last of the valence shell, 7 electrons are present here, and in the last or valence shell only 1 electron is present. So this is these both of them are elements. We know that all the elements, they have a tendency to form a stable configuration. How the configuration will be stable? When the last shell or the valence shell, it has 8 electrons, and this rule, it is known as octet rule. This rule is known as octet rule. Octet means 8. It means in the last or the valence shell, if 8 electrons are present, then it will be a stable configuration. And all the elements, they want their configuration to be stable. The exceptions, only 2 exceptions are there, hydrogen and helium, which follow duplet rule, where in the last shell 2 electrons are present. Apart from these 2, all wants their valence shell to have 8 electrons. So for sodium, as only 1 is present, so it will be easier for sodium to donate this electron, and for chlorine to accept 1 electron. is easier for chlorine to make it 8, then it will have 2, 8, 8, and it will have only 2 and 8, as M will be gone and the L shell will be the last shell, and now it will become the valence shell, and 8 is octet. According to octet rule, this will be stable. And here what will happen, if one electron is taken, it will also be 8, 8, 2, 8, 8, and it will also be stable. But what will happen here, sodium, it will have 11 protons, and now it is having one electron gone. So now the number of electrons will be 10. So this is positive charge and electrons are negatively charged. So what is left? That is one positive charge is left, because positive are more and negative are less. One electron has gone. So 2 plus 8, only 10 electrons are left here, and protons are 11. So now this sodium, it is having one positive charge and it has become an ion, and this ion is cation. All of us know cation has plus signs. What is about chlorine? Chlorine has one more electron is there, so its proton, it is having 17 protons which are plus. Now the electrons are 18. 8, 8, 16 plus 2, 18. Now it has 18 electrons. So what is the difference? One electron is more. So now the chlorine will have one negative charge. So now ion of the chlorine is formed with one negative charge, and this is known as anion. So by giving one electron, it becomes cation. By accepting one electron, it becomes anion, and now both are having stable configuration. So this is how both of them, they combine to form a salt. And how this salt is formed, we will take only the valence electron. So I am writing, it is written like this. This is Na, and it is having, suppose in the last shell, only one electron. This is the electron of sodium. And chlorine, in the last shell, how many electrons were present? This is 1, I have written here. Here 7 electrons were present in the last shell. 2, 4, 6 and 7. I have drawn 7 electrons in chlorine when it is in the atom, like this atom. So what happens? This sodium can donate its electron and it can take. Total giving and total receiving, or total taking of electron. So what will form next when it is give and take? Then Na plus chlorine, we can form it like this. This is the electron of sodium. So NaCl compound is formed. And this compound, which are formed like this by total giving and total taking up of electrons from one metal and one non-metal, they are known as electrovalent compounds, or they are also known as ionic compounds. Why they are known as ionic compounds? Because they have ions. Now sodium and chlorine, they are ions. So they are known as ionic compounds. And why electrovalent compounds? Because they have a force of attraction in between them. Both are ions and both are oppositely charged, and we know when two charges which are oppositely charged, that is one is plus, other is minus, both of them, they attract each other. And this force of attraction between them is known as electrical charge. It is some electrostatic charge. So the force of attraction between them is electrostatic charge, electrostatic force. And due to this force, they come near to each other, and this force, or this, in chemistry this is known as bonding. So this electrovalent bond or ionic bond which is in between this metal and non-metal, it is a very strong bond. Why this is so strong? Because these are two having different charges and they come very close to each other, and the force of attraction is so much that they are quite near each other, and this bonding is known as electrovalent bonding or ionic bonding. And this ionic bonding or electrovalent bonding is always in between metal and non-metal. You remember this thing? Metal and non-metal, they form this ionic bonding. There is one more bonding we will learn afterwards, that is between non-metal and non-metal, and this bonding is known as covalent bonding. We will study it in next chapters. Non-metal plus non-metal, covalent bonding. Metal plus non-metal, ionic or electrovalent bonding. And the bond between them is ionic bond or electrovalent bond. And the force of attraction is electrostatic force. This is how this metal and non-metal, they form salt NaCl. Now the next question arises whether this NaCl is a molecule, a group or molecule of what? Exactly, Na and Cl, they are not molecules. It is a cation, it is an anion. So this NaCl is a substance which is a group of ions, or we can say aggregate of ions. These ions, they are present together. They are living together. They are not molecules. So we cannot say NaCl as a molecular compound. It is a group of ions or aggregate of ions. Though NaCl is neutral. When we see NaCl, it is neutral, having no charge. But we know that Na and Cl independently, they are having plus and minus charges. So in this way, ionic compounds are formed. I will take one more example of one more ionic compound, and that is magnesium. The number is 12 and configuration is 282. In the last shell, in the M shell, 2 electrons are present. Here I am taking chlorine only, like this. So this has 12 protons. So it will have charge which is 2 plus. So it will form a cation. Magnesium will form a cation with 2 plus charges, as 2 electrons are donated. When 2 electrons are donated, then the number will be 12 minus 10, 2 plus. So magnesium is having 2 positive charges. Is it clear to all of you? Proton, 12 protons are there. The atomic number is 12, 282. When 12 protons are there, electrons are 8. 8 plus 2, 2 have gone. So magnesium will have 2 positive charges, and this is a cation. Here this chlorine is having the same and 1 negative. This chlorine is anion having 1 negative charge. But what happens? This magnesium wants to be stable, and now it is stable 2,8. This chlorine is also stable 2,8,8. But Suppose I draw magnesium here. It is having 2 electrons. One it is giving to this chlorine, but the formula of MgCl2 will be formed, which is having 1 magnesium and 2 chlorine. So the other electron is given to the other atom of chlorine. Like this, the 2 electrons for magnesium, 1 each goes to 1 chlorine atom. So the formula will be MgCl2. We can write it like this: Mg minus 2 electrons. So Mg plus 2 is formed, 2Cl plus 2E is Cl2. So Mg plus Cl2, MgCl2 will be formed. So this is how an ionic compound MgCl2 is formed. Likewise, we can take many other examples. We can take the example of calcium and oxygen. Oxygen is 2,6, calcium is 20, 2, 8, 8, 2. This is the configuration of calcium. This is the configuration of oxygen. Now in your notebooks, you draw diagram like this and you make the formula of calcium oxide, CaO, by donating electron from calcium and accepting electrons by oxygen. This you do in your notebooks. So this is how ionic compounds are formed or electrovalent compounds are formed. Now we should learn about the properties of these compounds. One thing you have to remember, that these compounds, they are formed by metal and non-metal. Metal is donor, non-metal is receiver. It receives the electron and it donates the electron. So now we will study something about their properties. Very simple properties are there. There are 4 or 5 properties. We will take one by one. One is they are formed, they are not molecular. So we should write they are formed by ions and they are not formed by molecules. We know cation and anion together, they form these ionic compounds. The second is about their physical state. Physical state, you know, whether they are solid, liquid or gases, they are very much solids. And these are strong solids, but they are brittle. Why they are solids? Because these are the molecules. Suppose cation, anion, cation, anion, cation, anion. They are so close to each other. That is, the space between them is no space between them. So the closer the ions, the more solids they are. We have read in our previous class, suppose this is solid form of matter. You have drawn this. This is the liquid form of matter and this is the gaseous form of matter. That is, the particles, they are quite apart in gases, they are in between in liquids and they are very close up in solids. So here the ions are so close to each other, they are very small in size and they are so close to each other, there is so much force of attraction between them that they become strong solids which are brittle in nature. Due to this strong force of attraction, due to strong electrostatic force of attraction, a bond is formed known as ionic bond or electrovalent bond, and due to this strong bond, they are always solid in physical state. So this is the second point, and the third is about solubility. Most of them, generally, they are soluble in water, and they are not soluble in organic solvents. I will tell you why they are soluble in water, why they are not soluble in organic solvents. Organic solvents, you know, they may be alcohol, benzene, any ethyl alcohol, methyl alcohol, or what else? They may be chloroform, it may be ether, any. So these are organic. It may be petrol or kerosene. So any petroleum product. So these are organic solvents. These ionic compounds, they are insoluble in organic solvents, but they are very much soluble in water. Why they are soluble in water? Suppose we have NaCl. We know they are having charges, and there is a great force of attraction between these charges. There is a special quality of water. What is this quality? Water, it weakens the forces between these ions. Water has a tendency to weaken the force between the ions, and this property of water is known as dielectric property. This property of water is known as dielectric property. What does it mean? That water weakens the force between the ions, and slowly both the ions, when the force is broken, then both the ions, they become separate, and now they can flow or they can move freely in the solution. Suppose this is in a beaker, water is taken, NaCl is put in this. So Na and Cl, both ions, they will be make free by this dielectric property of water. This force is weakens, later it is broken, and they move freely in the water and form the NaCl aqueous solution is formed, where both the ions, they are free now. They are free to move. In this way, they are soluble in water, insoluble in this, and the solubility is due to the property of water, and the ions are made free in water. So this is the third property. Now the fourth is they have very high melting points and boiling points. If we want to heat up salt, table salt or NaCl in a spoon, it will not melt. Neither it will boil nor it will melt, because it is having very high melting and boiling point, more than 1000, around 15,000. All these ionic compounds, they are having boiling point something around 15,000 or 1500. So why this high melting and boiling point is there? Again the same thing, due to the strong force of attraction between the ions. This force is so strong that by heat it is not possible to break this force. When they are heated at a very high temperature, then only this force weakens and ions, they separate with one another, and they can be in molten state at very high heat, at very high temperature. So due to this strong force, their melting and boiling point is very high. It's not easy to vaporize them, and not easy to melt them in liquid. This is how. And the fifth and most important is conduction of electricity. Whether they can conduct electricity or not. Now these ionic compounds, we can have them in three states. One in solid state, second in liquid state. Liquid means when they are molten at high temperature, when they are in molten state, and third in aqueous solution. So we can have these ionic compounds, suppose sodium chloride, copper sulfate, any, we can have in three forms. Now all of you know what is current, how it flows. The current flows by the movement of ions or by the movement of electrons. All of you know, you have done electricity, that is flow of electrons through a conductor is the current, flow of electricity. So the flow of electricity or conduction of electricity is due to the free electrons or free ions. When ions can move, electrons can move, then only electricity can pass, can conduct. In solid state, the ions are so close to each other. They are not free. They are bound with each other, and as no free ions are there, no free electrons are there, so in solid state, these ionic compounds cannot conduct electricity. Now in molten state, yes, electricity can be conducted. How? Suppose it is NaCl. When high temperature is given, it becomes melted. The two ions, they become separated due to the high heat. These attraction force, they are broken, and both the ions, they become separate now. They can move freely in the molten state. So the electricity can be conducted in molten state when these ionic compounds are in liquid form. And aqueous, very much. Aqueous, all of us know that all the ions, they are moving freely as they are soluble in water, and when the ions are free to move, they can conduct electricity very easily. We can have an experiment. Suppose these are two electrodes. This is suppose NaCl solution, and it is connected with the bulb electric circuit. What will happen? The electricity will pass as the ions are free here. Sodium and chlorine, they are free, and electricity can pass and bulb will glow. We know, very simple experiment. We have done it quite a times. So it shows that electricity passes in molten state as well as in aqueous solution. So these are 5 properties of ionic compounds, and this is about formation and properties of electrovalent or ionic compounds. This is all.